Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Transection podcast. We're so excited to have you with us here today for episode 3 of season 3. I can't believe it. It's going so well. Thank you so much for all your support and for everybody listening. Even if you don't end up tweeting us or messaging us or anything, we still see your numbers pop up on all of our sort of insights and all our statistics. So I know that you're listening, even if you're not talking to me. But thank you for that. And as always, we would always love to hear from you. So if you've got anything to say, or you just want a shout out, or you want to wish somebody like a happy birthday, anything like that, or good luck, or whatever, then write to us, and we'll give you a shout out and read your messages. Last week we had the amazing Jonathan Andre Cullerton, who is the creator of Bombshell, the series. If you've not watched it yet, go and have a look. It's not for kids. As most things on this show aren't. But go and have a look if you haven't already. It's great fun. It is a little bit naughty. It's definitely adult, but it's really well done, really well put together. And as you'll be aware, if you joined us for episode 2 with Jonathan, you'll know that in the recording, Jonathan was talking about this project that hadn't made it out at the time that we recorded it. But I mentioned what the project was that Jonathan was fundraising for in the intro. And I'm so amazed. I just checked before recording this intro today, but they had a goal of $30,000, and that was to fund their pilot for their new series Spookable, which is kind of like a horror comedy with 2 trans characters. And I just checked, and they have just about made it, $29,452. So 98% of the way there. So big congratulations to them. Please go and follow Spookable and Heath and Henshaw on social media and support what they're doing, because as you know from listening to episode 2, if you've listened to it, a lot of inclusive stuff is not getting the green light, or it's not getting funded, or it's not getting deals with kind of big companies and stuff. So all of that support will help to change things for the better. And I don't know about you, but I do think that there are a lot of recycled stories now, and I for one am definitely looking for new stuff to watch, things that we've never seen before. So yeah. Anyway, today I'm so excited to bring to you the interview that I did with Jordan Gray. And if you haven't heard about her, you're missing out. She's an absolute gem. She originally started out in singing and has gone into comedy. So let me read you the little bio that I've got here. British comedian and screenwriter Jordan Gray is the creator and co-star of Comedy Central UK's record-breaking Transection. Beyond comedy, she is perhaps best known for being the first ever transgender contestant on The Voice, and she was a 2016 semi-finalist. She was also the focus of the 2018 ITV documentary Transformation Street, which I think I did watch back then. TV's still coming a long way, but you know, I'm always really excited to see our people on the telly. And as I mentioned before, Jordan was actually great fun in real life. And I know that for a lot of people, that's kind of sounds like stating the obvious to say that a comedian is funny in real life, but actually a lot of comedians are just very good at being funny as a skill. It's not necessarily how they live their everyday life. Many of them are quite serious people. And I was absolutely delighted that we'd had such a good chat. We had such a laugh, and Jordan, I felt like she really brought her A game to this interview. So I really hope that you enjoy it, and please do let us know your favourite part, what you loved. Give us a shout out, anything like that. We would really appreciate it. As always, please go and follow us on social media or send us a message. We're on Facebook, the Transection Podcast, on Instagram at Transection Podcast, Twitter at Transection P, and I'm even on TikTok at Transection Podcast. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of our releases or anything else that's going on, please go to muxharrishill.com/transection, and there's a little green box. You could just put your name and your email address in there, and that way every time we do a release or something, we'll just send you a little email. It's not spammy, it's not loads, it's just the important stuff. So go and do that. It will take you like 5 seconds. If you've heard me say this a few times now and you've thought to yourself, yeah, I will do that, why don't you pause and do it now? And then you can stop thinking to yourself, oh, I need to do that, because then you'd have done it. It's a one-time thing. It takes 10 seconds. Anyway, without further ado, here is today's episode. In a time of great change, we're all making efforts to become more ethical, more educated people. The Transection podcast interviews people from many different backgrounds to bring different aspects of human rights to life through humour, authenticity, and personal stories. We are privileged to get a glimpse into different people's realities and to get first-hand advice and information from people on the front line of great social change. I'm Harris Eddie Hill, inclusive coach, speaker and educator, and this is the Transection podcast. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Transection podcast, and today I'm joined by the one and only Jordan Gray. Hey Jordan.
Hello Harris, that's a nice thing for you to have me on the show. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel I'm like well overlit for this occasion. Look at that. I'm going to melt in my, this is one of those spotlights. So it's a binary option. I'm either dark or I'm like, on fire. Is this all right?
Yeah, it's fine. It looks good actually.
You look really nice.
Oh, thanks. So do you. I'm
your
always
hair. Your hair, it has what, like a sort of a mauve metallicness to it, which is something you don't see very often. Sort of a shiny.
Yeah.
So it like a purple or.
Yeah. So the roots are like a very dark crimson, and then the ends go to like this pale purple. I would like to say that it was intentional, and I spent ages on it, but I didn't. The ends have just been bleached so much that they don't hold the red anymore. So as it washes out, it looks like this, which looks nice on, like I've done it on purpose, but I haven't. It's just a nice accident.
It does. It looks crafted. It looks very well choreographed almost. It's like it's sort of a piece of poetry on your head. I like it.
Thank you. That's the most unique compliment I've ever had about my hair.
Yeah. It's a follicle literary masterpiece. Yeah, I feel like it's almost got words to it. Yeah, it's nice. It's like a song. It's like a song spread out of your noggin.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, Jordan. So, Jordan, a lot of people will know you from things like The Voice and your mini-series Transection and things like that. But I met you, I reckon it was 10 years ago, must have been about 10 years ago, and you were singing at a pub. And I'm a proper introvert and I have sensory issues, so I very rarely get to see people singing live. But I happened to be there at the pub with my best mate, and I think maybe her boyfriend and her mum at the time, I can't remember. But I saw you there singing live, and it's not a treat I get very often because the idea of festivals and concerts scare the shit out of me. But you really made a big impression of me, and I followed you since then. And then, for years on Facebook, and then, you ended up on The Voice, which I mentioned to you before we started recording that I purposefully didn't watch you on The Voice because I felt like I wanted only really to listen to you as being like authentic and not on stage and not managed by anyone and stuff. And how was that experience for you, going from, singing in pubs to being on national telly? It must have been a bit of a surprise.
It's unusual transition to make in your life. What I will say is that we share that in common. Both of us did not watch me on The Voice specifically on purpose. I didn't see the last 2 episodes. I'd never seen the show before, but of all the shows, because when you make music for a living and your website numbers are in any way healthy, you're just approached by these shows. You don't have to stand in a line. Nobody's really standing in a line to queue up and do their show. They just write to you and ask if you want to do it. And it was the one for me that had the most sort of kudos to it, because you're sort of pre-vetted for The Voice. You're not thrown up there to be laughed at, or it's not exploitative. It's just if you fancy going on and doing your thing. It is a completely different experience. But I will say, of all the shows, again, I can only speak for The Voice, they really did sort of let me do what I wanted. The difference is I learned that I wasn't really singing properly. I say properly is a relative term. I learned to open up areas of my esophageal equipment that previously were unknown to me. And when I listen back to recordings of me singing in pubs, I'm sort of I'm shrieking the top notes like I'm Axl Rose, thinking I'm like I'm like doing a really amazing job. And then post voice, I can hit them, but in my heart, I don't think they're as good. I think, yeah, technically they're better, but yeah, maybe I was sort of like tamed a little bit by the TV experience. But they were great. They let me kind of choose what I wanted to sing and where and how I wanted to present myself. So it wasn't the horror story it could be. And I don't think I'm a very domineering person either. So it certainly wasn't me insisting. They just were quite nice. I do miss those days in those pubs. I don't miss the travelling. That's hard, especially because I don't drive. So taking my keyboard to all these weird, out of the way sort of backwater places. I don't know if that term is offensive. Backwater. Does that just mean it's out of the way, or is that a slur that I
No,
don't
I
know?
think it just means
Backwater's
out
not
of the
sort of a
way. I think it. I mean,
good, good.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you know
Do want to imply
different, tweet
sort of, yeah.
us.
Yeah, please tweet really, really aggressively as well. Like, so I definitely learned my lesson. Because I'm like a work, I'm a working class person, and I'm proud of my working class origin. So it's certainly not meant to be a slur of any way. Yeah, an unusual transition. I quite like the attention. I like the fame. I like all the colours and the lights and that. But
Oh,
I don't. I like you. I don't like. I don't know what you're like now, but I don't like big crowds and concerts unless I'm on the stage, because then you sort of also it's not very claustrophobic. If anything, you get quite agoraphobic because there's a lot of space around you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of big crowds.
mm. Yeah, it's a friend of mine said the other day, she was like, "Oh, I'm going to this festival in the summer. Do you want to come?" And I was like, I had to phrase it nicely. I had to sort of swallow my initial reaction of like, I'd rather, you know, lick a dog poo in the park. But I thought, no, I can't say that. So I just said, thank you for thinking of me, but it's not really my bag. um, but yeah, so after all the voice stuff, I know that I've followed you for a while, and I saw at one point that you'd posted about kind of going more into comedy. So what happened between, the voice and singing and then going into comedy? Was that just one of those things that life handed you, or was it a conscious decision?
It was very much. I never had a plan B in my entire life. It was always music. When you basically decide what you're going to do before you have the capacity to decide between basic concepts like good and evil or how to use the toilet. Like I already knew I was going to sing, so I was never like, oh, how does this career work? It's just like, well, this is what I do, so I'll do it forever. And then I did The Voice. It was lovely. And then I brought out a single, which I keep getting told off for saying is bad, because it's not bad. It's a great little song. But it was like how you described perhaps being corralled by the experience, sort of tamed by the experience, and being staged. The song didn't sound anything like me, and it was really expensive, and it took a lot of my heart and soul to make it. It just came out sounding like everything else on the radio. So I got extremely. That was very, very hard thing to take. It's very, very painful. And then it all just started to seem like a bit of a joke. And then I thought, hey, here's the thing: if it's a joke, I might as well just be in on that joke and just be a comedian instead. I mean, it
Nice.
worked for, you know, Ricky Gervais made a career out of like he was a failed musician himself. He and his band, they were pop singers. I think Lee Evans was a proper musician before stand up. A lot of comedians aspired to be rock stars, and they were on that trajectory, and then they decided it was all a bit weird uh, and had no self awareness. So then you move into comedy, and I like it. I like making jokes about the sort of the reality TV reject pile. I think it's an important thing for people to like. Unless you've been through it, you don't get the authority to make fun of it. So I've actually done it now, so it's all right for me to poke fun at myself because it really happened. I was there inside that little box we've all got in our living rooms. And comedy's immediate. I love comedy because you make a joke, and if it works or doesn't work, you find out straight away. If music isn't working, no one's going to let you know until the song is finished 3.5 minutes later. So if they didn't enjoy it, that was a long time to not be enjoying something. If a joke isn't working, you find out straight away, and you can pivot and you can change and you can mix it up. Response, which is really nice when you're sort of addicted to that kind of response, when you're addicted to that audience interaction. You want it as quick as possible.
Yeah, I get that. It's funny because as I mentioned before we came on, I had only dealt with my fear of performing musically in front of people like slightly under 3 years ago. And the following year, after I had that sort of NLP to make me not be afraid of performing anymore, I was in Australia and I was managing a hostel, and we'd reinstated karaoke night. Um, and
Right.
in between people choosing their songs and what they wanted to do, I suddenly found myself standing with the microphone and telling really, really shit jokes. And it's the first time in my entire life that I was in front of people and 100% comfortable. It was the first time in my life I've never had nerves. Even as a child, putting my hand up in class, I'd have nerves, like just
Yeah.
answering in front of
Yeah.
other people. But telling jokes and being revolting with a microphone in my in my face, I was like, oh no, I hope this hope this isn't an omen for something I'm going to do later, because I can't deal. I've got too many missions in my life. I can't deal with trying to be funny as well.
It's a whole facet of a person's character. I don't know how you felt in school. I certainly was not the funny one, nor would I describe myself as the funny one now. But there were funny ones, weren't there? We remember there was like the funny one's best mate, who for whom some funny had rubbed off, and he was like taking it out to the masses. Like that wasn't me. So when you realize there's this whole other muscle that you weren't stretching your entire life, I don't think I do reckon everyone inherently can be funny. It's about self-awareness, though. You can be funny by accident, which is got to be one of the biggest sort of what's the word? It's just so tremendously unfair. That's the cosmic irony of being funny, and you don't realize. But if you can become self-aware, I think you can be funny. So when you're telling these jokes to these people, did you find that like there's something amazing about being really puerile, but not, it's not for the sake of it, because anyone can tell like a shit joke or whatever, and it can land with a mass audience, but there's other people who've decided that that's below them and that's it won't work. But sometimes, because we're all like made of like meat and dirt and like wiggly bits and stuff. So when you just talk authentically about that stuff, I think there's something in everybody that's like, oh yeah, she's talking about me. Oh my god, yeah, like this is like we're all part of this same. We've all come from the same dirt. Um, and that goes up the board. So that's like irrelevant of class. So when you tell obviously sex jokes and rude jokes, like I will never be able to not fall back on that stuff, because it just feels like an authentic part of my character. But so sorry, I asked you a question and then I answered it for you. When you're telling these rude and dirty jokes, I mean, where did that spring from? That was coming out of your mouth?
I think there's always a part of me that's the inner child, I think this part of me has always existed since I was very, very small. You know, anything like poo related or a fart or anything like that will always, if it's well timed and it's done well and it's not something that somebody does to excess and they're just revolting, but if it's intentional and well timed, that will stay with me for a very long time. And I think, like you say, it is going back to that essence of being a human being, and it's relevant to literally everybody. And I think uh my best friend, the one that I mentioned that I'd seen you perform with, we've been best mates for nearly 20 years, and when I met her, she used to say things that was such an overshare, but she would do it in a funny way with a big grin on her face, and she would say things that were just so revolting. And I completely, in a platonic way, fell in love with her because she was sharing these things, and I was like, yeah, that's happened to me, but I've never said it out loud. And then it sort of gave me permission to be more revolting with other people other than my family, because we already had that at home. And then so I think it just really connects, and I think it's I like shocking people, but not in a way that's like upsetting, but in a way that's like, oh my god, I can't believe you actually said that out loud, or you were honest enough to admit to doing that. So I think,
That's the word. That's honest. It's we have repressed certain aspects of our daily behavior, possibly the most common aspect of our daily behavior, our daily ablutions, our digestive system. We've repressed that to the point where by bringing it up, the body, laughter is I think, what's the word? Spasmodic expiration is the scientific term for laughter. We resonate, we vibrate with all that repressed energy, and it just comes out. And it's why if you bring it up in front of perhaps one person, they might be shocked and appalled. But that same person sitting in a room of other people, it only takes one to laugh, and all of our brains switch to that person. Like, okay, well, this is accepted. So I need to let that tension out. I'm either going to scream or I'm going to laugh. It's the same. It's the exact same reason why if somebody walks too close up to you and puts their face right next to your face, if you don't know them, it's terrifying. If you do know them, you can't help but and you laugh. It's an inherent tension, and it can go one way or the other. So yeah, by bringing it up in an authentic way with a big smile, who could be sort of shocked by that? You just have to laugh. That's the best thing about comedy. It's undeniable. It's a leveler across the playing field. You could share totally differing politics, but if you can make somebody laugh, something about their physical body reacts in a way to what you've done. They can't deny it. No, right, okay, I guess I found that funny. Awful, atrocious things that you could never say to anybody. If you laugh, you're like, well, you laughed. I said it. Sure, put my hands up. You laughed. Like, if you didn't laugh, fine. You can be a moral paragon, and that's fine. You can sit in the throne, but you laughed. Therefore, there's got to be something between us. We've got to share something. It's quite
yeah.
magical, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think sharing a laugh with somebody, and I think for me, I will occasionally dare myself to have a laugh with a stranger, and that's still, I think, bonding with strangers is still something that's quite a weird thing for me. But I think, having an online presence and like strangers interacting with your stuff all the time, I think there are these little moments, and I'm always like, with somebody I'm comfortable with and I have trust with, I will say terrible things to them, and they'll do it back to me, and it's completely consensual. But I don't know about you. I think when you're daring to do that with a stranger, there's a little bit of tension for me. And I've recently made Facebook friends with somebody, and they tagged me in something, kind of calling me out for something that I do. It was just really like nothing important, and I just said, like, replied, "How dare you?" but didn't put any laughing emoji. And I was like,
I love that.
are they
I
gonna
love
read
that
that
so
as
much.
me just like having fun, or are they going to think I'm really offended? And there's always that moment of tension of like, how's this going to go? Do you find that when you're doing like stand up and stuff like that?
It's bold. It's a bold move, but what you're doing is you're vetting that person's friendship for yourself, and that's a great thing. It's really reductionist. In any people win arguments all the time by saying, "Look, there's two kinds of people in the world." There's not. There's millions of kinds of people. Doesn't matter how you try to categorize it. We're so different in so many ways. I think that there is a vast majority of people in the world that just don't have the same level of self-awareness. It doesn't make them bad people. They're very sweet, they're gullible and naive, and they go. And then there's people that have so much self-awareness that really it's not worth anything because it just makes everything slightly more miserable. But I've got self-awareness. You have self-awareness. We know the sort of the subtlety of just typing "How dare you?" full stop, and yes, it elicits laughter in somebody else that has that self-awareness. I'm so glad you brought this up. I've just remembered. So whenever I go for my transgender tune-up, right, I go to like this place in Essex somewhere. I don't know, but is they're proper and that, and when you're sitting in a waiting room and lots when you're transgender, like people occasionally will just stare for and don't realize they're staring, and they're trying to figure out perhaps what you represent in their lives. What is this person in front of me? And I, to negate that, will sometimes just poke my tongue out because it's me saying, I know you're looking. I'm not going to embarrass you in front of everyone. I'm not going to bring it up, but I'll be like, poke my little tongue out. And then they either look away or they acknowledge that I was looking, and then it's like a bit more friendly. And I did it to this guy in that place in this waiting room, and it was awkward for a little bit. And he looked away, and I was like, yeah, that's right. You looking at me, I got you. And he came up to me and he was like, do I know you? I was like, and I never met him. So I then was on the back foot. So I had to lie. And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, I think I do. Because he basically pointed out to me, because like, otherwise, why would you have stuck your tongue out at me? He wasn't looking at me at all. It was just me being an egotistical maniac. So then I have to make excuses and say, oh, yeah, no, we met at that barbecue. So I was just being sort of friendly in that. I was thought, because yeah, mate, if I didn't, because then if you did know me, you come over and like, and it turned out he had coincidentally seen me on The Voice. So he was trying to figure out this whole time where I'd met me. And I just lied to him point blank to his face. I was like, yeah, no, we met at that John's barbecue or whatever. That's why I poked my tongue out. So, because I thought it'd be a fun little way to reconnect. So it just goes to show, like, some of us can also just be egotistical maniacs.
Yeah, I've had moments like that when I'm out in public and someone's looking at you, like, and you can see they're just trying to work it out. And I think, you know, being trans, non-binary, and very tall and colourful and very difficult to miss, a lot of the time I'm like, oh God, are they looking at me because I'm queer or this, that, and the other? And occasionally they're like, don't I know your mum? And I'm like, fuck me. All right, yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
strange cross section. Like, that is the. There was a weird time just after The Voice where, I mean, if you were to take data, I'm sure more people were staring because they just recognised somebody that they'd just seen on a box, and then that. As that starts to, as the news cycle starts to change, you know, less people obviously saw. No one would remember this face now. Um, then I had to make a conscious decision to start telling myself, like, you just stop deciding in advance what other people are staring at you for, because it could be for any number of reasons. Don't. The worst thing is to assume that they think that they recognize you for fame related reasons, and it was the exact opposite. I mean, I've never been guilty of that. I've never walked up to someone and said, yes, it's me. Yes, it's me. Like, I was just trying to figure out if you're a bloke. Like, oh, okay. All right. But yes, it's me off the old telly box.
How has it been to be in comedy as a trans person? Because I think that, you know, often we're so objectified and talked about in abstract ways, and particularly within comedy, it's like, oh, anybody's a target, and it's only fair that anybody's going to be a punchline. So, and I've seen a few clips of your stand up, and one that will always stay with me was opal fruits and starburst, when you were talking about when you were saying
It,
everything, you know, everything changes, something's always something else before it becomes what it is now, or some words to that effect.
yeah, I take great pleasure in reducing the complexities of the transgender experience, into extremely palatable little sound bites for people that are outside the community to just understand. Before I moved into comedy, I used to close a lot of musical sets by asking. I say, I'm sure I'd be at Sparkle Festival or something, like a big transgender festival, and I'd say, I'm sure this is the last place in the world where the word needs explaining, transgender. But I don't know, maybe you're brought along by a friend and you're thinking some of these women are incredibly tall, and I would say, look, all it means being transgender is that I used to be miserable and now I'm very happy with my life. And it's not a laugh out loud like joke. Very sweet of you to laugh out loud. It's not a joke as such. It's a bit of wordplay and it's a bit of a twist on the thing. It's got the basis of a joke, but it got such a huge response because it's kind of like what you would say to a child, and a kid would go, oh, okay, I get it. Can I have a sweet, like, whatever? Like, they don't care. So that sort of stuff resonates. So yeah, when people say, I'll never date a transgender bird because she used to be a man, I say Starburst used to be Opal Fruit, Sif used to be Jif.
Yeah,
Like, probably, I don't know. I don't know. I've
and
never
also
cleaned in
with
my
that
life.
same with that same logical thinking, uh we would all be pedophiles because everyone used to be a
Exactly.
child. Like,
Exactly.
people
That's
are who
it.
they are now. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Or well, you know, I wouldn't sleep. I would never sleep with a transgender woman because she was born a man. I was like, I was born a baby. If I'd been born a man, you probably would have heard about it.
Yeah. This is
Somebody would have written it about it.
that phrase. I have posted about this phrase so many times, and it's something, you know, and for me, like, I'm on the spectrum, so when people use idioms and sayings, I automatically think it's ridiculous in the first place and think that these people are possibly on drugs. Um, but you know, when people, I don't know where the phrase "born a man or a woman" comes from. I'm like, we are born potatoes. If somebody gave birth, if somebody gave birth to an entire man or woman, like, we would be in trouble as a species. That would be really messed up. So I don't know where this
Yeah,
idea
somebody's jumped the
comes.
shark there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody's. That's an advancement. That is X-Men level advancement of evolution. We don't need that just yet.
No. No, and I think also I'm just like, at what point, like, we're not saying, I don't know, I just think it's this idea that, like, we all started off with the same thing and some of us diverged, and I'm like, no, I think for the most part we were always us, but just other people got it wrong. And I find, I'm having this conversation a lot with the parents that I'm supporting who have trans and non-binary kids, because I'm often saying to them, like, who you believed your child to be was nothing to do with them. They never, like, signed a contract like, yes, mummy or daddy, this is who I'm going to be, and this is who I'm going to love, and this is how I'm going to identify. Like, they're just working it out. And I don't know where, so
That's so nice to phrase it like that. Yeah, that's really nice way of putting. Yeah, I guess a parent wouldn't think twice. They're the ones inputting all this information, and of course, kids get it from everywhere, like TV or whatever. So when things don't start to fulfill the contract that the parent thought that the kid had signed, that's a really nice way of phrasing it. I shall endeavour to filter that into my speaking from now on. That's nice.
thanks.
If and citing you, of course, for the
Yeah,
for the quote.
give us a plug.
I say my mate Aris got this crazy idea, and then I'll just sort of say, and then I'll turn the chair around and sit like facing that way, like leaning, like like I'm being cool for like the kids. I'll be like, look, these doctors, they don't know. So let me just talk straight with you, my friend Harris, and then I'll just lay it all out on the line.
I
Also,
love it.
sorry to interrupt you. What I realise is, as you're there in brilliant, bright, like everything about you brilliantly well lit, my side of the screen is descending into darkness because half the light was natural light that's now nighttime.
That's
So I'm starting
okay.
to sort of look more. Is that all right with you that I'm now just
Yeah.
sort of talking to a
No, it's good. It's not like Blair
a
Witch or
spectre?
anything. I think it's fine.
I was sorry to interrupt. I also was really interested in something you said before. So if I'm backtracking unduly, just tell me to shut up.
No,
But
go for it.
when you speak about being on the spectrum, there is an amazing parallel to be drawn with the idea of what's the word? I suppose lateral thinking, or what are the two types of thinking? Lateral. The comedians. What comedians are doing is taking preconceived ideas and pointing them out from a different angle. Which an idiom is a perfect example. My wife, bless her, she's from Czech Republic. Her English is perfect, but she doesn't know the idioms because that's something you have to learn every single one individually. And so, in her sweet broken English, she will say, she'll repeat idioms to me in ridiculous, like, "What do you think about this bag of apples?" I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's, well, what do you think? What do you think of them apples? Um, and it's because the way her brain is structured, of course, and the way language works. She has basically given me some free comedy. Like, she'll do that all the time. And so when we speak about being on the spectrum and the way your brain tackles different, the way things are structured differently, that's inherently built-in comedy. You're doing what comedians try really hard to do all the time. Is that something that you have been consciously aware of, or has it been a hindrance to your, I
No,
say, comedy career,
I
hindrance
enjoy
to
it.
your life, making people
No, I
laugh?
think
Yeah.
it's good. I think so many of the things in my life that could have been a problem were kind of waylaid because I was massively tall. I was 2 feet long when I was born, and
Two feet long.
yeah, and then by the
Is that,
time I was 11, I was 5'11", and I stopped growing at 6'1.5". So I feel like a lot of the
wow?
things that a smaller kid would have been absolutely brutalized for, I was just too tall, and actually, to some to some extent really unaware and just floating around when I was younger quite a lot. So I think it saved me a lot of problems. And I think there were many occasions when people were probably being unkind and I just had no clue. So I was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Oh, right. So of course, like an insult that is meant sarcastically, you just can just absorb it and go on with your day. You're like, everyone's being really nice today.
Well, it's funny
That's
because
really sweet.
sometimes I didn't know what people meant, but then I thought, I don't really care.
I mean, that's hit the nail on the head, isn't it? That's I take a lot of pleasure as well in saying, oftentimes, comedy critics might call it cheap and lazy for me to come up here and make jokes about being transgender. What those people tend to forget is that they can fuck off. Like, it's nothing. I'm going to switch my big light on
Yeah, go
because
for it.
I am now literally. This is the color aspect of our screen has been made redundant. So I'm just going to switch it on.
No worries.
Ah, there we go. Look at that lovely tone of pink that I've just brought in out of nowhere. There we go.
It's beautiful. I
Apologies.
see it now. That's good.
Yeah. Oh.
So how is comedy like being a trans person? Do you think it's like do you think that it does bring do you think that you're cutting through a lot of the kind of social bullshit? Because like you said earlier, if you're getting people to laugh, you're kind of bypassing a lot of their ego and their thinking, right? You're going straight into the gut.
I'm very lucky. I suppose in way you'd say it's lucky that most of my audience is like a Middle England, very broad audience. I'm speaking to people that would otherwise not be entirely sure what they were looking at when they saw me and spoke to me. It's just that is my audience. The reason I say that that's lucky is because it means that I have had to train really hard to be able to communicate with every single kind of person. It's really lovely playing LGBT plus community gigs that's just solely people from our community because they understand all the terminologies, so you don't have to explain stuff before a joke. Worst thing in the world is explaining how a joke works before it's happened. So that's it's a lot of fun, but I hazard to use the phrase echo chamber in the same way that I hazard to use the phrase backwater, because I don't really know if that is not the right term to use. Um, Playing to an echo chamber means that you forget that there's a whole subsection of society. Most people call it like society. Like a lot of people, they don't know what's going on. They didn't get the memo, and so they need to be lulled into it. So yes, what's really nice, this is the point I'm getting to, it's the same thing about making jokes about poop and stuff. There is an inherent tension about the subject because we don't talk about what happens in the bathroom, because everyone in the room is thinking or waiting for me to say something about what they are looking at gender wise. The tension is inherently there, and that's a gift for a comedian. It's like letting the air out of a balloon. That's what you want to do. You want to let that tension out of the room in one big go, um, by making some little silly reference, and then they're on side for the rest. That's it. The game is over. They are absolutely on side as soon as you mention it. It's like if you had a nose in the middle of your forehead, and you didn't mention. I mean, nobody does, as far as I know. Again, I'm stepping over a lot of lasers over here. Try not to be offensive. I picked that very specifically because most people don't have a nose in the middle of their forehead. If you did though, and you didn't bring it up, you're doing a disservice to the audience, because it does, like, once you're a comedian, you're on stage, you sort of belong to them now for that time, just for that little bit of time. You have to bring it up. You can't do 15 minutes of stuff about airplane food and not bring up the nose in the middle of your forehead. And as soon as you do, they're your best friends, and it can be done very deftly. There's a misconception that it has to be self-deprecating. My stage persona is really high status. I come out and I'm like, look at me, I'm so much better than you because I'm the next stage of human evolution. Like, look at me doing this. Look at the way my hands move. I'm amazing, and people laugh because they know it's not serious. But yeah, you don't have to come out and sell yourself short as a transgender person to get laughs. A lot of early comedians perhaps feel like they have to do that and do really baseline jokes. Personally, I think there's nothing better than a really well told joke, say a really well crafted joke about your own sort of subsection of society. Like, it's like a personal thing. It's an extremely personal thing. Are you a fan, for example, of like roast comedy? Do you watch a lot of roasts?
I've seen a few. I've seen a few here or there.
Yeah. So like if I do them quite a lot, they're the most enjoyable thing, because if somebody can make a transgender joke that is so well thought out and cuts to the core without being cliche and ridiculous, and it's about me personally, because then it's not attacking the subsection of society, it means that they know you so well and they've handled it so deftly and so well that it's essentially a compliment. It's saying to somebody, I know you, and I'm not tearing you down for the sake of, for no reason. I've picked something really specific that is you on a spiritual level, and we're gonna play with it. We're gonna turn that on its head. It's really counterintuitive, because from the outside it can seem like bullying, but there's I don't, again, so this, my own opinions on comedians are probably going to be slightly different, because I'm looking at it from a place of comedy rather than the social context. There's a lot of comedians that are not doing transgender jokes right, that a lot of them very famously so, popularly so, and there's others that are being criticized unduly, in my opinion. I think Dave Chappelle's latest, he brought out 4 specials at once, because he's the king of comedy. The first 2 took some pretty cheap shots, and then they were addressed in the second half. And in the second half, he says something that I wish I had thought of to say, because it's the simplest way of putting the transgender experience. He says, he's explaining how, he's sorry, that he maybe should have learned a bit more. He should have picked a less cliche way of attacking it. And he said, but like, these people, they're trapped in the wrong body, which is a very old-fashioned phrase, but it's a fair enough thing to say to a big audience. He says they're trapped in the wrong body, and he says it doesn't matter which way you look at it. It's like, that's a fucking hilarious predicament. It's like he's hitting the nail on the head. If you're stuck in a box, if you're stuck in a letterbox or whatever, or if you get trapped in a vending machine, it's funny from the right angle. It's not inherent. It doesn't matter. Yeah, the fact that we're stuck in the wrong bodies, as he puts it, and obviously people got different ways of expressing it. It's inherently tragic. Of course, it's tragic. It's a thing to have to work through. It's an obstacle, let's say, at least. It's a difficult obstacle. But from a certain angle, at a certain distance, with enough time, anyone that has a problem, it's funny, because that's what every sitcom is about. It's about people overcoming problems. And he just phrased it so well, and he got so much stick for it. I was like, oh, as a core joke, that is the sweetest thing you can say. It's like, that's a fucking hilarious predicament. Bless them, like those guys have got to deal with this shit. So when all that came out, I was kind of, I looked at it more from a comedian's point of view than a transgender person's. That's how long I've been saying it. I've forgotten how you say the word. As a transgender individual, that's my whole life, is juggling being a comedian and being transgender.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I stay away from a lot of those types of things, just because I'm like, I mean, first of all, a lot of these people who've been slated in the media in the last few years for being transphobic, I don't watch them anyway. So I'm like, oh, well, that's taken me zero
Yeah.
effort to give up watching somebody I already don't watch. But also, like, people before now have spoken to me, like the cisgender people in my life, and they've been like, oh, well, this isn't funny and that's not funny. And I'm like, 95% of my time in my community, we are ripping the piss out of each other or our experiences, or making jokes about girl dick, or boys with, finally men can understand what it is to go through menstruation and having babies. And we there's not a day that goes by in the last like nearly 7 years since I've been doing my advocacy that I haven't laughed, and that we haven't shared these hilarious
Exactly.
things. And I think that if any aspect of your life is to do with the grittiness, like we were saying earlier, whether you're like a nurse, or a firefighter, or there's an aspect of your life that's maybe a little bit challenging. I think that most of the coping mechanism around that is being real and being able to have a laugh. I think that's like a major component of getting through something difficult.
Yeah, gallows humor, they call it, don't they?
Yeah.
The idea, and gallows humor is specific to to that specific trauma, that specific occupation that deals with that, or the specific subsection of society that is dealing with a specific trauma. So sharing each other's gallows humor can be very problematic, or sort of reclaiming somebody else's is a difficult thing to do properly without upsetting somebody, because you've earned it. We've earned the right to laugh about it. And I don't think people in society should be shunned, as comedians should be shunned for making jokes about something that everyone is basically trying to understand. It's a comedian's job trying to make people understand. The jokes that are the most offensive, honestly, in my opinion, are the ones that are the ones that we would never tell, because they're so cliche. Not because there's anything out of bounds, because they're so cliche. I think we're quite lucky now. The time of, oh, surprise, she's got a penis, that's not even on the radar anymore. That's so old school that's basically doesn't, that's been rendered redundant, luckily. So if that kind of humor crops up, you're like, well, yeah, this person doesn't understand us, therefore they don't. It's not funny. If someone's trying really hard, even if they miss the mark, but they're trying to say something unique and authentic without give them their due. I've seen a lot of people around me, comedians, might make jokes, for example, about they might make the Thailand connection. And it's like, it's very sweet. You're trying, and I've heard it a million times, so it's not like I'm gonna crack up every time I hear this old stereotype that my people originate from the land of Thailand. But it's not exactly punching down to connect those dots. There's nothing inherently offensive about pointing out a stereotype if you do it. If all you're doing is pointing it out and deconstructing it and making a joke about it. So yeah, people got to give people a chance. But I say, if these people aren't a part of your everyday consumption, if you're not a Ricky Gervais fan or a Jim Norton, who obviously does a lot of stuff about transgender people, then yeah, you're not missing out if you don't want to watch him anymore. Like Graham Linehan is, I'm so late to the game with so much stuff. Like, so I think he's one of maybe 2 or 3 people where I was like, oh shit, oh okay, yeah, I do now have, there's some stuff that I did previously enjoy that is now ruined for me. It's a really funny episode of Alan Partridge where he just pops up. Oh man, what an idiot. So, but that rarely happens. I mean, that's when somebody is so saturated with a hatred of something specific. Yeah, it's just his appearance is sort of tainted that a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. I think Harry Potter was on TV over the weekend and over Easter again. And my dad is not. His finger is not on the pulse with any of this stuff whatsoever. So he just put it on, and I was like, I can't really enjoy it like I used to. And
yeah.
but
Does it make you feel better though to, like, when you one by one the casts come out in support of the community? Does it sort of tip it back in the right direction for you to be able to enjoy it when, say, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and
yeah, Rupert, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, all of those moments when the stars are, they're all stepping forward and they're much more progressive and, everything. Yeah, it makes it lovely. It really does. But, ultimately, the creator is who she is. And I've said it in other interviews before, but I don't want to give her any more money. And, I feel like really positive about reading those books when I was growing up, because I needed a lot of escapism when I was growing up, and those books were some of the ones that I read for what I needed at the time. So it was really good. But I'm a grown up now, and I would rather spend my time and my money on people who align with my values rather than
yeah.
slagging people off. How do you feel about that?
That's a very elegant way of putting it. It's like, I absolutely agree. Like, I suppose, to offer some consolation as a creator, as a person who aspires to be a showrunner myself, like as somebody who has created something, a show, and working from the ground up, it kind of belongs to everybody once you've made it, or once it's reached a certain point. It's everybody's thing. So were I, for example, to do something heinous with my career, in 20 years people will be watching, you know, Transaction, which you can watch now on the Comedy Central social media. They could be pretty safe in the knowledge that like it was only my input at the beginning, but then it basically is everybody else's. It's very much a corporate like what I'm saying is it's not J.K. Rowling's. Those aren't J.K. Rowling's films. Books, of course, they splurge out one person, and then they might be drafted a few times, and there'll be notes from editors and stuff. But once you're making television, when you're making feature films, I don't watch a Harry Potter film. She never pops into my head if ever I see them. I wasn't like a huge fan. I mean, they're great. They're well made films. But when I see images of those films, her face and name doesn't pop into my head. They're these massive productions. Thousands of people worked on those, thousands of different artists with different visions. So when I see them doing their thing, I don't think, oh, J.K. Rowling thought of that. Oh, that's a shame. I just think, oh wow, look at him pretending that someone's there and he's doing that. Oh yeah, it's great. So yeah, that as from a creative standpoint, it's just like watching a sort of an orchestra, those
Yeah.
things. So her presence dissipates into, you know, this grand spectacle. And in terms of the financial remuneration, again, I'm not J.K. Rowling. I'd like her money, but that's, you know, apart from that, we differ quite greatly. Yeah, I imagine again, it's sort of once you've been paid for it, like royalties aren't really a thing anymore. Like they exist, but they're not what they used to be. Like
Mm.
people used to make a lot of money on residuals in television and stuff that doesn't really exist anymore. So don't, yeah. If I don't know why I'm fighting this point so much. If you don't want to watch Harry Potter, don't watch it. If it comes on, I'd like you to be able to maybe uh, re-experience some of that joy that you felt in your childhood, because at that point it's less tainted by her. Especially if it's on TV, you're just watching TV. Like if it's on BBC, your taxpayers' money is paying it, your TV license. If you're just watching it on telly or whatever, you know, there's no money. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, fair
Or
enough.
don't. Why am I pushing this point so hard? Just do what you like.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I think I don't know that there's one exactly right answer to all these things, but I think you've got to
Yeah.
make your own peace with it in a way that feels right for you. So how has it been like making a mini series? What was all that like, and how did it start? Where did it all come from?
It's such a joy. I mean, it's my next chapter of my career. Definitely, I moved quite unceremoniously from music into comedy. I basically just dropped the music and started, and this is the next phase. I want to make TV for the rest of my life. It's so collaborative. It's such a joy. So many moving parts. There's a lot of pressure. Uh, that what's really it's so rewarding when a nugget of an idea, this ineffable emotion that you wanted to communicate with the scene, if it survives all the way to the screen, something really amazing has happened, because that's difficult. It's difficult enough. It's as difficult as like carrying a handful of water across from your sink into your bath to like get rid of a wayward hair from like the edge. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there's so many things can fail, and so much can be misinterpreted, and so many people along the road just don't have the same self-awareness that we do. I'm so such like what's the phrase I'm looking for? I'm being very elitist when it sounds like I'm being really elitist when I say that. Again, people with self-awareness are wonderful, and it has no bearing on IQ either. It's just some people go through life quite oblivious to like the subtleties of conversation. And those people, when they work in telly, means that a joke that was initially perhaps supposed to be a roasty sort of gag between two characters. We had this with Liv, myself, and Tom, played by Tom Gray. We roast each other all the way through the episodes, and an exec very early on said, "Why are they so mean to each other if they're supposed to be friends?" It's like, that's the exact point. Two friends can walk into a room and say that stuff to each other, and the audience goes, "Wow, they must really be friends." Whereas a person without the self-awareness says, "I think they shouldn't be as mean to each other." So then, of course, what that really means to an audience is, well, then they can't be that good friends if they can't be that mean to each other. And it's a really hard point to drive home over and over and over again. And then when it arrives on the screen, it's obvious. You're like, oh, of course they're friends. Look at them, they're friends, and they can say this stuff to each other. That's been a battle worth fighting. And now that I have the language, I can communicate that better as we push it up the chain. Um, it's a joy. It's a joy. It's like it's the best thing I've done with my life, and I'm very proud of what we made.
Yeah, good. That's amazing. And it's just the beginning, right? This little mini series. More to come.
Yeah, it's like a taster. It's Transaction. It's set in. It's me it's me without a hat on and a different name. Like other than that, it's just me. Uh, and I play Liv, who is an affirmative action hire. She, of course, transgender, typecast myself, and she and her best friend Tom are trying to navigate the world of the night shift. And she is very much aware she's an affirmative action hire, and thus she can get away with murder because everyone is too afraid to say anything. It's a commentary on that whole part of our culture, the awkward conversations people don't want to have. And a big part of it for me, when we started, I said, look, I don't want to make a transgender character who is a suffering saint, nor do I want to perpetuate a stereotype of this over-sexualized like villain character. Like she's not a serial killer or whatever. Like, she is just like most people. Most people, with present company excluded, most people are a bit of a dickhead, right? I'm a bit of a dickhead. I want to play a character who's a bit of a dickhead. I just want like people to show transgender people are just people. Some people are idiots. They're ergo. Some transgender people are just idiots as well. It humanizes us to show that side of the character. And it really is just me. It's just me that didn't go into music. Yeah, and that's the message. And yes, indeed, it looks like our little baby is growing big, grown-up TV legs. There's an analogy from from somebody who calls himself a writer. My TV show's got big, grown-up legs now, and it looks like it's on its way to the old silver screen. I don't even know what that means. It's not going to. You're not going to see it in cinemas. You might see it on your TV in your house. But fingers crossed and all that.
Yeah, fingers crossed and congrats. It's cool.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. I mean, I feel pride just releasing a series of podcasts that I've recorded on Zoom and then edited myself on Windows Movie Maker. And then
That's
published
already
it.
a lot further than most podcasters do. Most people don't bother editing down to which is fine. We talked about it before, a bit rough and ready. But that level of production you've just described already puts you like ahead of 90% of fledgling podcasters. But I say fledgling, this is season 3. So you are a veteran at this point. Congratulations.
Amazing, thank you. Amazing to think. We've only been around for a year, and it all started with me and my original co-host, also Jordan. We were exchanging voice notes about funny dick stories, and they said this needs to be a podcast, and I said okay. So it's amazing what happens.
That's it. Yeah, you could have easily just stitched those voice notes together for episode 1. But you went to the trouble of setting up a podcast. Again, diligence. You've got a podcast diligence, and I respect that about you, Harris.
Thank you.
Do you have any funny dick stories that haven't yet made it into the podcast? Have you burned through them? Did you burn through them in season 1?
No.
I mean, they're inherently always funny.
Yeah, I mean they usually are. Yeah, I've got one. When I first went to uni, I think it was literally like the second weekend that I was there. I'd gone out on a night out. I was dancing with this lad who I'd literally just met. My bag got stolen, and it had my week's money in it that my mum had dropped off to me. And she lived like
that's
9. I know it was a bit sad.
Yeah.
She was like 90 miles away. Like an hour and a half's drive away. So I was gutted. I was really upset. And this lad took me to the ATM and he got out 100 quid for me and handed it to me. And he said, I have more money than I need, because he worked like I don't know if he wasn't a plumber, but it was something along, some sort of trade. And he lived with his sister, and he was a young lad. And he's like, I've got more money than I need, so have 100 quid. And then I cried again because I was so like grateful and so touched. And
Yeah.
I don't think it was that night, but I think maybe the next week we ended up sleeping together for the first time. And the lights were off, and I had a Zippo tin that had all my condoms in it.
A Zippo tin.
Yeah.
I know this is not the relevant part to this story, but what's a Zippo tin?
Like a Zippo lighter. If you get a proper Zippo lighter, it comes in a little tin. So that's where I kept all.
Okay.
all my Johnnies in there.
Well, there you go. So that's just the extra colour that the story
Yeah,
needed, right? Sorry,
yeah.
I've caught up now. Yeah, okay,
Okay.
good.
So I reached for it in the dark, sort of, assisted him, and then by the time it was all finished and he'd turned the light on, it was a strawberry flavored one, apparently, although I had no way of knowing that in the dark. And his knob was like bright red, and the the first time that we'd had this sort of sweet encounter and turned the light on, and we just both burst out laughing, and I was like, this is
That's
not how I saw it
adorable.
going.
That's great. That's a funny thing. Like I reckon there's the thing that's inherently funny about a penis is that they have two different states. I can't remember who said this first. This is not an original idea, but because they can be in two different physical states, the speed at which they go between that is inherently really funny.
Yeah.
So if you right, so if it was in its flaccid state and you turned a light off and then you turned it back on 2 seconds later and it was up, that would be funny. That would be so unsexual, it'd be funny. So there's maybe something about that, a penis that you assume to be one color to be another color. I mean, it is inherently funny. Unfortunate color, of course, because that could inherently set off alarm bells to anybody, because that is a color associated with sort of disaster, physical disaster about your person. But luckily, yeah, the fact that you're able to
It
laugh
was
about it
more, I think,
straight
because
away.
of the color and the sheer vibrancy of it felt a bit like we had kind of turned the light on and then we were sort of in the presence of a balloon animal or something along those lines. So
Yeah.
it
Like
was,
Rudolph.
yeah,
Like a little Rudolph's nose.
yes, yeah, it was, it was funny, definitely funny, and not romantic or sexual in any way.
So
uh,
that's a good one. I feel honoured that you have shared, because this, like, it sounds to me like the show's genesis was dick jokes, like
yeah.
funny Willy stories. The fact that one has survived all the way to series 3 and I got to hear it first, I'm really pleased with that. Thanks for
I've
entertaining
got
me
a
with
lot
that
more. If
little
in
bit
the
of your personal
future,
history.
yeah, if in the future you're like, do you know what would really cheer me up is a Harris Dick story? Just message me. I've got a few. So
I I don't know if I've got any necessarily in the barrel, because
yeah,
of course it is my life. Uh, it gets about. It definitely arrives in places it shouldn't. I do a lot of comedy in the news, not just anywhere. I don't just bust it out anywhere, but when I do comedy in cabaret venues, and I'm the comedian of the night, I'll jump on, do some stuff, and then I'm just nude, completely unceremoniously, because you see these wonderful cabaret performers and it comes off bit by bit and it's all beautiful and wonderful, and there's no airs and graces to the way I do it. It's just, well, oi, look at this, mad, isn't it? Look at this novel combination that I have. And it's great because it instantly levels the playing field with the whole audience. Everyone's like, oh, okay, well, we have to sort of decide right now that this is okay, and that we're not the cognitive dissonance that you might expect from a non-LGBT person seeing boobs and a willy. Their brain goes, oh, okay. Like, and the whole room is like, oh, okay, fine, it's fine now. But then I play the piano as well, and I'll often close on a big number, and I take sort of a lot of pleasure in. Sometimes I'll just close. I'll close the set with like a song, and then an arpeggio. I'll finish with like a do 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 ding. And sometimes I think it's funny to hit top C with the end of my penis, right? So it's da 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 da, and then just ding, and it's fun. It's a fun way to like end. But I did it on Christmas Eve. I did it on Christmas Eve in London in a place called the Curtain, and the stage was bombed by all the other acts that were on. We all jumped on the stage. It was wonderful. And I was playing Fairy Tale of New York, and we finished ding, and there at the edge of the keyboard was this gentleman. I can't remember his name. He had proportional dwarfism, so he was a little person, and he was dressed as Santa Claus because everyone was dressed as Santa Claus. And he'd been really like gracious throughout the evening, but I didn't really get a chance to talk to him. And then all of a sudden, I realized I'm just standing there with my penis at like face height, like at his face, and he's just standing there. And we just looked at each other, and it was the weirdest moment of my career. We both just looked at each other like, who is the one that's being exploited in this situation? Is it them or is it us? Because right now, this is just like a Victorian freak show. We're just both just up here. I'm nude. He's dressed up like Santa Claus, and we just looked at each other like, it was a real moment, a shared moment of like, there was something quite special. And that's my funny dick story. I think it asks more questions than it answers, to be fair, a story like that.
I love it. I love
But that
it.
happened.
I was trying not
It
to
was really
laugh
nice.
too loudly so that I wouldn't screw up the recording, but that's gold. I was not expecting to hear that caliber of story today. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And it will never be repeated. That is too many different elements to have happened at the same time to ever happen again.
Yeah.
Probably in any other multiple universe, even in the multiverse, that's never happened.
Yeah.
It's special. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. Sorry, I covered up my microphone.
That's right. Amazing. Jordan, if people want to follow you or watch your content and stuff, where can they find you and what should they be searching for?
Oh, you can always follow me across my own social media. That would be Twitter, Facebook, and the old Instagram. And that's at Tall Dark Friend, which was the stage name that I had when you saw me perform music. That was my stage name for many years. Don't ask me what it means. I didn't know then, and I don't know now. It just sounded really mysterious at the time.
Yeah.
Tall Dark Friend. And you can check out Transection across Comedy Central UK's social media. Again, Facebook, Instagram TV, YouTube. It's all there. Transection, Jordan Gray. That'd be me. I'll be in it. I won't be wearing a hat. So make your own mind up.
Yeah, you pulled out all the
Don't sign
stops.
up.
No hat.
That's it.
More than
No
one
hat.
light.
Yeah, exactly. The light level was consistent, so it didn't drop off halfway through. I didn't sour the experience with the story about how I sort of traumatized a man with proportional dwarfism by putting my genitals in his face. He was very gracious about the situation. He was really, really nice about it because it's just sort of seemed par for the course. But I wouldn't do that if it wasn't on a stage in front of a load of people. So, you know,
Yeah.
I could imagine if he decided to kick off, he'd be well within his rights. But it just happened to be there, and
Yeah.
So I didn't mention that in Transaction. That's just for you, just for you,
This is an
Harris.
exclusive.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you could find me across those places, and it'd be lovely to talk to your listeners and get some feedback as to whether or not I completely derailed what has been an otherwise fantastic run of shows with my ridiculous sense of self. Like
No.
I try to be a good role model, but I also am like this.
Yeah, I mean, same. To be fair, Jordan, if you get a chance after this, if you go back and listened to season 2, the Christmas special with me and other Jordan, you will listen to that and be completely reassured that you were well within the bounds of what is acceptable on this podcast. So, and I've
Oh yeah,
thoroughly,
specifically Christmas themed debauchery. Is that
yeah,
exact same thing? Okay, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's not just Christmas themed. We really were pulling out some of our uh, most colourful stories. So, no, it's all. I've absolutely loved this chat, Jordan. And later, when your sort of endeavours become more and more, even more bigger.
I'm so glad you committed to that. You don't worry about finding the word because we know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like just commit to it. That's your even more bigger.
Yeah, even more bigger. I would love to invite you back because I've enjoyed this a lot and we've had a lot of laughs. And, you know, I think people learn a lot more if they're enjoying it and they're laughing and there's lots of funny stories. And I think you 100% delivered on that. So,
Bless you. Ditto. What a nice meeting of minds. Thank you so much for having me. And viewers, continue to support this fantastic institution. Like, what an amazing thing. Are you plans presumably to run indefinitely? I suppose, Harris, is that the plan? This will go on until you're
yeah.
physically stopped.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, the truth be told, at the end of season 2, I was like, I don't really know if this is helping people, if people are listening. And then suddenly I got a flurry of people contacting me about the podcast and you know how much what difference it's made to them. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go bigger and better. And so for season 3,
Biggerer and
e-
betterer every time.
even
Yeah.
bigger and even more better, yeah. And
Yeah.
so this time around I was like, well, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to invite people on that I think are fab, including yourself. And it's just, honestly, I'm so excited about this, like the amount of amazing people that I've spoken to this series, because I'm just about finished recording it in this time now, and I'm just so excited about it. So yeah, I'll see what happens. I mean, I may get bored of myself eventually and then just never speak again. But for the time being,
That's that's an unfortunate, inevitable conclusion to find yourself at. But that's art, Harris.
yeah.
All art inevitably leads to its own destruction, as the postmodernist would say. So just write it out while you can. I've had a right ruddy laugh. I will go back and listen to the if your half of this conversation is anything to go by, then I know I'm going to enjoy the back catalogue immensely.
Oh,
So
Jordan,
yes,
thank
thanks
you.
for having me, and just keep being your right bloody better, bigger self. What a nice thing to have done with our evening.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks so much, Jordan. Hey, and thanks so much for joining us this week. Next week, I'm so excited to bring to you a conversation with David McQueen, who is an executive coach and founder of Q Squared. David particularly coaches leadership and talks a lot about inclusion, and he's extremely vocal. He also swears occasionally, which obviously makes him all right in my book. And he has such amazing insights and such a strength of character at the same time as being very inclusive and championing human rights and intersectional issues and all that sort of thing. And it's amazing. I love having David sort of within my sphere of social media and the people that I interact with regularly, because I think it really helps when you've got somebody in your corner who is a little bit more mature, had a bit more practice with, standing by his values, calling out bigotry, racism, anything like that. So we had a really amazing chat, and I'd really encourage you to come listen. Um, so much wisdom and humor and patience this man has, and I think he really contributes a lot to every conversation around values, what behaviors we'll accept, and all that kind of thing. So come and join us for episode 4 next week, and I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you have anything to say, please message us. We always love to hear from you, and we will see you next week. Take care, friends.